Hi and welcome in this photography beginner tutorial video. Today I tell you everything about the Aperture, what it does, how you need it, how you use it and everything else.
My name is Benjamin Jaworskyj, photographer and adventurer. 10 years ago, I started to teach myself photography. Today, I travel the world as a professional photographer and filmmaker. Learn from my experiences, mistakes and tips and join me on my photography adventures.
So I have here my Sony a6000 camera, and this video is perfect for you if you just started to photograph, if you have a new camera and just want to learn real photography in manual mode. So the first thing that I do on the a6000 is changing the mode to the manual mode. So all my cameras are manual mode all the time, and I would say that is the real photography thing. So now on the back of your screen you have different things. You have on the left side the shutter speed, it's the thing with the slash. You have the F thing, that is the aperture, and you have the ISO. About all of the stuff, of the different things, I will talk in separate videos, so check out my playlist on my channel if I have the other videos already uploaded, or maybe it's just the first video that we uploaded now. So what we focus on is the F thing, f1.8. What does it actually mean, the F? And I googled it and it's quite interesting. People are not quite sure what it actually means. It can mean focal, factorial or fractional. What the people are sure about is that it's called stop, f-stop, because it's stopping or blocking the light getting inside of the camera. You can find your aperture inside of your lens, and I can actually show it to you, and you can watch it yourself when you have a lens with a nice open aperture, so a very low f number. So for example, this here is a 55mm lens, so the last thing here means the millimeter, 55, that is the focal length, and it's f1.8, and 1.8 means it's very open. You can see it here on the front. There's a big hole. And when I now change the aperture, and you can change, for example, on the a6000 when you're in manual mode with that wheel here, the aperture, and then you see all the numbers flying by. 1.8, 2.0, 2.2, 2.5, 2.8, 3.2, 3.5, 4. Blah, 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 till it is on this lens on 22. When I now look in the front of the lens, I can see that something has changed, because now there's just a little tiny hole. So on f22, you have a closed aperture, and it looks like this. So not much light get in the camera. So where's the aperture actually? It is in the lens. So I have a different lens here, and I can change the aperture manually here. And when I turn the wheel, I see how it goes from this, so the full amount of light gets in the camera, a lot of light, to this. Not much light getting in the camera anymore, so just a small amount. So it's quite confusing, but the small number always means big hole, and the big number means small hole. But when you just remember that and just look in your camera and you see changing the thing and changing it in the front, it's quite easy to remember. And there's as well something with all three things, shutter speed, ISO and aperture. All three things make a picture brighter or darker. And for example on f1.8, so open hole, you can see it as well in the front, you get a lot of light in, the picture is brighter. And when you have like f9 or f22, a small hole, the picture is darker. So quite easy to remember, quite easy, what I think, to understand. Okay, so it just lets more or less light in the camera, but there's a nice effect you get with the aperture, and that's what I show you now. But I switch the cameras, so I go now in the camera which we are filming now, and I will film this camera here, the a6000 lying here, and I will just show you what the aperture does. Ooh, that's a nice image. Look at this. So I'm on f1.4 right now on a 35mm lens. You can give it a try as well with like an f1.8 or even 2.8 or 3.5. Then just zoom in as much as you can, go on a longer focal length, and you get a nice blurry effect with an open aperture. So we start right now on f1.4 on a tripod. The focus is right here. You can see my fingertip is sharp right now. And what I do now, I'm on ISO auto and my shutter speed is 1/100th of a second. And now I just change the aperture from 1.4 to 1.6, 1.7, 2.0, 2.2, 2.5, 2.8, 3.2, 3.5, 4.0. I do it a bit faster. 11 we are right now, 13, 14, and this lens only goes till f16. And what you can see when I do it fast right now, how blurry the background gets when it's open and how sharp it gets when it's closed. Amazing effect, isn't it? So whenever you want a blurry background, you need to open your aperture. So a lot of light has to come in the camera. And that is also quite useful because in a lot of situations when you want a more blurry background, you need a longer lens, so a longer focus lens. And you will learn something in the shutter speed episode about not shaking in the image, and that's why it's nice to have a lens with an open aperture. The problem with an open aperture, because you can say now, let's do like every lens with an open aperture, is that it's more expensive because you need more glass, it's a lot heavier, and it's more expensive. So whenever you can, I would always recommend to get the most open aperture you can get. So I have a lot of fixed focal lengths and lenses with f1.4. There's even f1.2 or 0.95 in an f-stop, so you get a lot of light inside and you get a lot of blurriness in the background and as well in the foreground. There's another problem with the aperture and it's the depth of field. The more light gets in the camera and the more open your aperture is, and the more blurry the background and the foreground is, the less sharpness you have on a subject. So let's say you focus on me right now with an open aperture, 1.4, you get very close, you have a nice blurry background, but you might only have an amount of sharpness which is this far. So from the beginning of my eye till the end of my eye, just a small amount. Or from the beginning of the tip of my nose till here. And my eyes are not sharp anymore. I just talked about depth of field and I will demonstrate it with this thing here. I focus now on the SONY here, and I'm on f1.4. Now I close the aperture, and as you can see, now even here it's sharp. So the amount of sharpness now, the depth of field goes from here to here, and even a bit in the background. So you can see my hand is quite sharp right now. When I close the aperture more, it's even sharper. But when I open it, it's blurry. My hand is blurry right now. So it's harder to focus with an open aperture, but when you master it, it's quite amazing. And I try to take all the photos of portraits, wildlife, and all the stuff that has to look very nice and effecty with an open aperture. In landscape, totally different. Closed aperture, because I want everything sharp in the image. I want a sharp foreground, like flowers or rock or something, a sharp middle ground, and a sharp background, sky, even astro things like Milky Way or stars. So that's when I close my aperture. Quite easy to understand. Give it a try. Try in the manual mode with the aperture what it does, and it's very easy to use and very nice to understand, and one of the most essential things in the manual mode in the camera to understand and to use. Oh, and before we come to the end, one practical tip. Whenever I photograph, I think before I photograph what effect I want to achieve in the image. Do I want a more blurry background? Then what do I take? And do I want a more sharp background and sharp foreground? What do I take? And that's the thing I fix first in the camera, and then I fix the shutter speed and the ISO that I get a proper exposure. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Share it with somebody who starts to photograph, and if you have any questions or something, just write it in the comments below, or other topics I should talk about. And we see us next time. Never forget, sag mal Einstellung, Digga, und haut rein. Oh, and when you want to learn Adobe Lightroom the easy and fun way and start edit your photos, check out my full video course at learnfromben.com.